One. Hey guys, and welcome to Not Another Fitness Podcast, a space dedicated to getting to know the person behind the whiteboard or chalkboard, depending on what your preference is in terms of programming. Some might even program behind computers. I do that too sometimes. So, welcome everyone. Today I have a very special guest. He is an international speaker. He's a mentor, or owner of Results Fitness in Santa Clarita, New Hall, technically, California. If you don't know where that's at, think of Magic Mountain in California, and you're going to get very close to that place. And he is an author. Most recently, he co-wrote Secrets of Successful Program Design. And here is, if you're watching the video, here is what the book looks like. That's right behind Alan there too. So
there you go.
so we get double the books. Alwyn Cosgrove, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Thank you for jumping on. We're just talking a little bit about some football or soccer for us Americans. And we're talking about Rangers dominance this year. So I just learned that they're the most successful team with most championships, right?
Yeah, I believe in the world. I mean, it's not to put down the Scottish League, but it's probably easier to win that than it is to win the Bundesliga, right? But that's it's still no other team has won as many national titles, I believe, than the Rangers in Glasgow, and Celtic are the rivals who are approaching their 10th in a row this year. So it looks like Rangers are going to stop them, which is just if you're in Scotland, it's big news. If you're in the US, you're like, what?
They're like the football's this week. The Super Bowl's this weekend. We don't care about it. So I've seen Alan, or I've heard Alan and seen Alan speak at Perform Better a couple times now, and every time I'm there, he has a different story to tell. He's very good at expressing himself, and from the first time when I heard him tell his story, I thought it was a fascinating story simply because it is one of those, I mean, essentially American dreams, you know, those that rags to riches that everybody always tells us, and it's fascinating to know how far hard work can get you. So I asked Alan to come on the show. Very, very intelligent man. If you follow him on Instagram, he constantly posts like mad scientist or stuff like that, because he's always thinking of different ways to get better. And
that's a nickname from one of my athletes.
There you go. and it's awesome to see everything he always like puts to practice. So I asked him to come on the show. He said yes. And I just wanted to share his story, and then we're gonna dive into some really cool things from his book, and we're also gonna talk OCR. So if you don't know what OCR is, obstacle course racing. There you go, and how his involvement in that can help develop the sport in the future. So Alan, without further ado, it's your show. Take it away.
All right. Well, what do you want to know? What do you want to know, Martin?
Tell us your story from Alan as a kid in Scotland, and then how you kind of came here, because I've heard that story and it's awesome, and like I love to hear it, how you ended up in New York, you worked there, and then you ended up opening up Results Fitness.
Yes, I was working. I'm from Scotland. Anybody who's listening has probably figured that accent out. And I grew up in a town called Livingston. I was born in Glasgow, which is a major city. I grew up in a town called Livingston, which is just between Glasgow and Edinburgh. And it was a rough area. I was a working class town in a working class area I lived in, and it was a rough area. So at that age, you kind of like some of one of my friends growing up ended up getting involved with drugs and ended up getting murdered. So I don't want to paint a bleak picture, because Scotland's an amazing place, but it's a rough area. And as a kid, I was you either have to learn how to run or you have to learn how to fight, right? You have to be fast. You're going to get in trouble, right? And I just was not interested in running, which is funny now with my involvement with OCR and road racing and things. So I get into martial arts young, like obsessively. Like a therapist would probably have a field day with how obsessed I was with what at the lowest level was self-defense, right? Just this raw combat. So I got a black belt when I was a teenager, and then I really went into the sport side of it, which was I competed in taekwondo mainly. I did open tournaments, and in a style called continuous sparring, which looks like kickboxing for the best description. It's a lighter contact version of kickboxing, like amateur boxing is to pro boxing, continuous is to kickboxing. This is before the UFC or any of those avenues were available. That sort of fascination with that led me to, and I wrote about this recently, the big lie about martial arts is that you use your opponent's strength against them, right? You hear that phrase a lot, like a jiu-jitsu, judo, use your opponent's strength against them. If that were true, let's just think, get on the logic train for a minute, and that 14-year-old little girl would have a massive advantage over that 250-pound man because his strength is such a limiting factor for him. Like, it's just nonsense, right? The reason we don't allow a little girl to fight a grown man is because it's unsafe. He's too strong, right? The reason we don't allow males to compete against females in combat sports and in nearly all sports, right, is because of it would be an unfair advantage because of strength. The reason there's weight classes in martial arts and in the combat sports is because of strength. So and largely true, a bigger guy is largely stronger than a smaller guy, right? That's largely true. But what we're really trying to do is create a level playing field based on strength. And we use sex and weight class to do that, because we would lie on a strength test and pretend we were weak so we could fight a weaker guy, right? Yes. And it is where weight cutting and stuff comes into in martial arts and combat sports. So this is my long way of saying that I realized the physical attributes as an athlete could be the difference makers. I could show you over Zoom right now the 4 key punches in boxing, and you would know the same punches that Floyd Mayweather knows. And you will not be able to do a thing against him because he does it at another level with timing, reflexes, and speed. So at a certain level, everybody knew Taekwondo. Everybody knew, side kicks and back kicks. And it was how fast you could apply them, how long you could apply them, conditioning-wise, how hard you could hit. So that sent me on a quest to college for purely selfish reasons, to study sports science. And particular strength training was my fascination with it. At that time, this was in the 90s, I had to take a class in health sciences as part of it. I forget the name of the class, but we had to write a general fat loss, they called it weight loss back then, general weight loss program for someone. And I remember reading a lot of stuff and coming up with a program that got me an A in academia. And I gave the program to my mom, who was overweight. Scotland is one of it might be, it's another crazy stat, it might be the heart disease capital of Europe. It may have the highest level of obesity and heart disease. Certainly the UK is not great. I think Scotland's a little worse. Not that the US is leading the way with either, right? But and I gave this program to my mother, who followed it religiously for about, I don't know, 12 weeks, 6 weeks, something. My mom died of a heart attack due to obesity when I was in my second year of college. And I miss her terribly, but the lesson for the listeners is this program that got an A at college level failed. It failed in the real world. They got an F in the real world. So that sent me on a pathway. As much as I'm interested in helping athletes, most of them are talented. Sport's never been better. The 100-meter record is in the last few years, the marathon record, the deadlift record, the squat, swimming records get broken every single event. Sport's never ever been better, but we're failing the masses with general fitness. The US has never been fatter. We're in the middle of the COVID epidemic right now, and you're 15, 1.5 times more likely to go to intensive care if you get COVID if you smoke, and you're 7 times as likely if you're obese. And we're not addressing it. We're not talking about it, right? So it sent me down a path to start really looking at fat loss, which changed the direction of what I did. But taking the story a little further, during this time there was an organization in the UK called BUNAC, which was the British Universities North America Club, I think what the C was. And they gave college students jobs as camp counselors in the US. So they're low paid summer camp jobs.
Okay.
Seems to be mainly on the East Coast of the US now that I've lived here for 26 years nearly. Seems to be mainly more of an East Coast thing for the summer. So every summer, it doesn't pay a lot, but they take care of your visa for you. They get your flight, and you've got your accommodation and all your meals, and you get some money, right? So it's you're not doing it for money, but you're no cost. So it's just was a fun thing to do. And I met some friends that just still friends to this day. So I was coming over every year to work at a summer camp and going back. So when I completely finished college and everything there, I had no real direction. So I said, I'll do one more summer job. One more time, I will go to the US and do this job. And then I applied for my visa. And to this day, man, I don't know if the rules changed because I'd been a bunch of times and come back, or if the law had changed, or it was a mistake. But this time, instead of like a 6-month visa, I had a 5-year one. So
Okay.
it wasn't like I had planned to stay, but now there's just this opportunity, right? So I didn't have to come home right away.
Yes.
And as I was leaving, my dad said to me, you don't owe Scotland anything. If you get an opportunity over there, it's a land of opportunity. He'd been, him and my mother had visited, before I was born, and he always loved it here. And he said, you get an opportunity there, take it. Don't look back. Don't worry about me. Take it. And it's interesting because we can all play this game. I can tell you, had my dad passed away, I would not have left my mom. I wouldn't have finished college, first of all. I'd have went and got a job and looked after my mother. But he said that to me, and I always respected him. And I know I couldn't come back and tell him there was no opportunity just because I didn't look.
Yeah. Right.
So we finished the summer camp job, and the camp that I worked at was in upstate New York, and it was attached to a hotel. It was up in the Catskills in New York, and it was like a Jewish resort hotel. It just seemed to be a place where a lot of Jewish people went over the years, right? You could go if you weren't Jewish. I don't know if that still works now, but it was definitely it was kosher food at all the meals, and so on. And it's actually the hotel, that whole area was the sort of inspiration behind the movie Dirty Dancing, which is a movie from the 90s, I think.
Yeah.
And that was where it was. The actual hotel it was based at was the one I worked at. So I got a job working there at the end of the summer camp job, lifeguarding, and working in the gym. If anybody wanted a training session, it was $0, and they would tip you. And like occasionally you'd get a kid who did taekwondo, and his parents would find out about me, and I'd do a little session with them.
Sweet.
Just doing that, and then I took another job in a team that they called the A staff, which stood for athletic staff, which was not athletic in the slightest. It was putting out chairs for, you had to be athletic because it was putting out chairs and moving things around, and like laying out sun loungers by the pool. So I'm there, I'm working 2 jobs, right? That's basically what I'm doing. And then one day we're down. This whole time is like 3 weeks after the summer camp finished. It's still the summer, right? It's still camp finished in August. It's not even Labor Day yet. And we're putting together this thing in this room, this frame, and we're stretching this massive sheet of canvas over it. And I'm like, what is this? And they're like, it's a boxing ring. I'm like, what are we doing? What's a boxing ring? Like, this is it's all old people here, right?
Yeah.
No, a lot of fighters come up here to train, and there's a guy, Alex Stewart, who's coming to train next week. He's 6 weeks out from a fight. And I was like, oh, wow. So we finished setting up the boxing thing, and I go back to my room, and then I left my sweatshirt down there, and I come back down to get it, and Alex's manager is in there with his trainer, and the manager of the hotel is there and introduces me, and the manager of the hotel was a big, wasn't a big boxing fan, but a lot of posters of Alex, who was his friend.
Okay.
And then so I talked to him, and it just, I said, hey, if you need anything, don't hesitate to ask me, just trying to be nice in front of the manager, right? And he goes, if you're serious, he goes, we need somebody to get Alex out of bed to run in the mornings. And I goes, well, I goes, believe it or not, I goes, my background, I goes, I got a degree in sports science, and explain like and he goes, oh, you're like they call him a conditioner, and the term strength and conditioning coach wasn't mainstream then. He goes, oh, you're a conditioner. I'm like, yeah, that's what I am, right? He goes, oh, excellent. And I ended up getting a job as Alex's strength and conditioning coach, right? Because I don't know what happened with his last one, right? But so we had, and in the beginning, Alex's strength was, dips, chins, and sit-ups was his strength program. And his running was, I remember him telling me he ran 6 days a week, 30 minutes, then 40 minutes, 30 minutes, 30 minutes, then 40 minutes. That was his morning run. And then as I built some trust with him, we started doing interval sprints and hills, and he let me do some more stuff with him, and we really built a bond and worked for a couple of fights. So between fights with boxers, they don't train year round. It's not like it's even with an NFL team, there's a lot of off, right? Same with the college, there's off. So we finished with that, and it's not like they were paying me to keep going. And I was like, right, well, I think the fight was beginning of October. And I said, well, you know what? I'll go home at Christmas time. I'll just go back to Scotland at Christmas time. Because I'll do something just now. And I happened to be leaving the hotel, and there's a New York Times lying there. And I grabbed it to read on the train. And there was a feature on personal trainers. Just like an article in it, and it listed 5 gyms, and it's a crazy picture. There's the owner of one gym is having a client doing this a cone hop, like a lateral cone hop. He's up really high, right? And I was like, this is not what I thought personal training was. Like, that's like sports training. That's what I do. Like, this is not what I thought it was. So me being naive, I thought there was 5 gyms in New York. So I sent them all my resume, and just said, like, I'm recently looking for temporary work, right? Like at this time. And one of them hired me, and I worked there, US Athletic Training Center on Madison Avenue in New York. And this place was just full of athletes coming through. The guys starting as 95, so they're starting to train for the 96 games. A lot of fencers, modern pentathlete, Michael Gostigan is coming through there, NFL prospects. And so I started working with some athletes and some general pop people, with this very intention of moving back to Scotland real shortly. And then I got asked to work at Gold's Gym on Broadway in New York, right? To run their place, which was on Broadway in New York. And I was like, right, because I met the owners. The owners worked out at this gym I was at, and I was telling them, like, I was planning on going home, and they're like, well, come work for us. I was like, maybe I'll do that. So I'm interviewing trainers there, and it's one of these like moments where I guess 11 o'clock, and we're full day of interviews, and I've got to leave, and our 11:15 shows up for her interview. And my partner who's doing interviews with me, I said to him, like, I gotta get out of here. You could do this one on your own. And he's like, yeah. I was all right, I gotta go. And then I said to the receptionist at the gym, I goes, hey, is she cute? This sounds horrible, right? I'm very much against unprofessionalism. Right, this sounds horrible. And she goes, yeah, she's very cute. And I was like, I'll wait and see. And then a girl from Santa Clarita, California, named Rachel Casper, walks in, and we just fast forward. We're married, and we run a gym together in Southern California. But I'll point out 2 things. She makes me point this out because she'll sit in another room right now and will come in and tell me. The gym never opened. The gym actually, it's a New York story of real estate and money, and ended up selling to another company and never opened. So I was never her boss. Okay. She wants me to say that, right? and then also, like, it's another one of these ripple effects. We never dated in any kind of, when we were working together at all. Okay. So the 2 things I just want to be, like, she'll make it be clear. I was never her boss, but if I had left, I would never have met her, because my partner thought she was a little too soft for the ruthless New York, right? Like that she might not be able to make it as a trainer in a New York gym. If the receptionist didn't think she was cute, right? And or if I would never have met her. She may
Yeah.
never have given her the job. Or if the gym had opened, I can just hand on heart, I would never have dated an employee, right? I never would have. It's just that's not. I hate that about fitness and about the sort of personal training industry, is that you're that sort of reputation. So there's a whole bunch of little things have to happen, right? Like my dad has to tell me to take a shot. I have to be putting up a boxing ring in a job unrelated to what I was working at the hotel for. I had to see the coaches and volunteer to work with Alex. I had to pick up the New York Times. I had to work at that gym and meet these guys, right? I had to, three things had to happen for me and Rachel to start dating, and here we are in Southern California owning a gym for 21 years. So and everybody has these stories. Mine is just easy to measure because it involves like across the world trip, right? There's a tremendous movie called Sliding. It's not a tremendous movie. It's a tremendous concept of a movie called Sliding Doors with Gwyneth Paltrow in it and John Hannah, who's funnily enough from Scotland. They meet. The whole concept is Gwyneth Paltrow leaves work early one day and it's going down to the subway in New York, and she gets down and the doors are sliding closed and she makes it onto the train, and then the screen splits and the doors close and she misses the train, and from then it shows how her life would be different because of that. This can be paralyzing because you're like, if we finish the podcast now, life could be completely different, right?
Yes.
So I think everybody has it, but just if I think this through, and there's a lot of things that have got you to this place with the podcast, I can assure you, if I didn't learn Taekwondo, we wouldn't have this conversation, because I wouldn't have went to college and I wouldn't have got our job working in the United States teaching Taekwondo at these summer camps, right? And I wouldn't have opened the gym. If my mom had not passed away, I wouldn't have finished college. I'd still be in Scotland. So your life and the result of the listeners who are maybe taking 5 minutes to listen to this are different. And we all have that. It's like this massive web of interactions. But like I said, mine I can measure because of the moves that it took.
Yeah, that's 100% true. I think, like I'm thinking about like everything you're saying and like all the events that led me to being here, and it's like I started at CSUN as a business major because my dad was a business major, and like who doesn't want to follow their dad's footsteps? But then like a year and a half into the degree, like I wasn't doing so well, and I'm like, I don't really love this, so I'm just gonna go to COC, which is the community college in Santa Clarita. I take a bunch of classes, and then I end up meeting Phil, who's a head coach at COC, and then like fast forward to like a year after, like or just a couple of weeks after or months, I get to meet Joel Gunterman, who's like now my mentor and a great friend. And like one morning, it just clicks. I'm like, shoot, I want to be a strength coach. Like I love this. Like this is what I want to do. And then when like a bunch of other stuff happened, like now I'm here, like trying to keep learning and just keep meeting more people in our industry, and just learning how all this is shaped and trying to learn everybody's stories, because everybody's stories are so unique, where it's like we all come in different shapes and sizes, and that's so true in our industry, right? We're not all like these guys who are roided out or who are just crazy and yell and do all this crazy stuff, like the stereotype that people have. And I guess that's also a reason why I wanted to start this podcast, to help break that stereotype that people have, and just learn that we're all different. And yes, they are going to be those like very passionate coaches who take to yelling for their coaching approach, but like we're just all so different. And yeah, so it's been a fun learning experience.
I think it's interesting is that the US, and I mean this respectfully, the US education system is set up a little differently. Is that most people go on to college to get a degree, and it's a degree with a major in geography, right? Like your major in history. So it's a general ed degree, which is really well rounded. In the UK, you don't have that. My degree is in sports science, right? Like I don't have art history, or I'm very narrow. Like I don't have a well-roundedness, but it really weeds it out, because all you're doing is the thing you're into. Yeah. Right. So like if it was business and you're just not into it, you'd never get through it. Like because it's the only, you're not looking forward to another class. It's the only class.
Yeah.
right? Like everything was sports science related. But I remember I knew I was reading the textbooks just anyway, right? It wasn't for assignments. I was just remember looking up like getting to the part of it was Fox, Foss and Bowers was our big text in undergrad, and looking up all these training programs like hollow sprints and things I'd never even heard of, and just geeking out on it, right, and writing out plans. And then I had guys that were in college with me hiring me to write their programs because I was so obsessed with it. But it is I think it's I prefer the US system because it makes you well-rounded and allows us you find something.
Yes.
Right, like you wouldn't have found anything to do with strength and conditioning had it not been able to do that, to move to a different college and stuff that you couldn't in the UK you couldn't do that as well. So yeah. I like it better, but it's also that you get this more of an opportunity to really find what you're interested in.
Yes.
Whereas if you might have just stopped college completely if you were in the UK under doing business, you might just be like, college is not for me.
Yeah.
Right. And but it was more the course was not for you.
Yes. 100%. And it's hard too. And that's why I was so open on on my first episode, it was just the pilot episode. That's why I was just so open with, there's always there's this idea, right, of the 4-year college student. Like for me, it took me a longer time. It took me 7 years to finish college, but during the time it was hard because I didn't really it was annoying in a sense, right? Plus your parents have these expectations of you and they want you to do well, and it was a difficult time. But once you're through that whole thing, you're like, wow, that whole ride was worth it, and I appreciate where I am now more than ever. So that was
in the UK, your undergrad is usually 3 years, but it's more like high school where you're nearly there full time. It's long days. It's a little more intense. So you've really it's just different. But some of the education system, I've talked to this before, right? If you go home and you've got your report card in high school and it says math A, English C, history C, geography C, and you're like, you're only good at math and your parents are pissed at everything else that you've failed at. But I don't care what my accountant got in art. I care that he's an A. The real world rewards specialists. I said, I'm not well rounded at all. I haven't done I can't point countries on a map really, right? I know my field, so I've always felt it rewards a generalist more. And then the other part is when you do your finals, and this was the same in worldwide, right? That you're not allowed to bring study material with you. I'm in a room full of books. I want to know, right, here's a book on email marketing, right? I don't have to memorize it. There's a book there. I've got the internet that I can look things up.
Yes.
If I have a problem with the training program, I got people I can ask. But if I leaned over and asked you in an exam, I'd get kicked out. It rewards generalists who can memorize things. Yeah. That's not how this works, right?
Yep. Same thoughts I had for whenever I took anatomy. I'm like, I understand that we need to have an understanding of anatomy, but do I really have to memorize these 50 things? When am I ever going to be put in a position in real life where I can't use my phone or bring out a book where I'm like, oh, that's that muscle and this muscle and X, Y, and Z. But yeah, it's just memorization. It does reward.
I can remember in 2004, I got diagnosed with cancer. And I remember the doctor showing me the protocol that they were going to use in a book. He showed me, this is the latest research. He goes, this is what we're going to do. Because I was asking questions. Yeah. And then you're at first you're like, wow, he's looking it up. That's weird. But you're also like, that's actually cool. Yeah. Because he's not just hey, I think it's 400 unit. He's just here's what we're gonna do. In your case, this is the plan. And I'm sure he was part showing it to put me at ease. But I was like, there's a doctor with a whole bunch of journals on the wall in his office on his shelves that he's consulting to continue to become an expert. Yes. But imagine if he just had to memorize that. Right, and he's 20 years into the field, and then it's like, wait, what is this? This is a different type of treatment. That's the logic of that system doesn't make sense. I would change. This is how I always, before I just put something. Here's how I would change it. You bring as much as you want to the exam with you, but we're going to have a time limit. Mm-hmm. So if you can't look it up fast enough, you won't pass. You still have to have a working knowledge. But I don't think your ability to right now, your ability to access information is what separates you, not your ability to memorize it.
True. And I think with that, who did I talk to about it? The ability to develop a filter now. I think it was the Josh last podcast. It's like there's so much information now that I think like the next kind of tool that we need to develop is, or the next ability is the ability to filter information. So like what is just like nonsense and what is actually legitimate information, because
I was on a podcast yesterday, Martin, and this came up that and it's actually true. I remember the number from yesterday. I did my thesis in undergrad. It was a dissertation on creatine monohydrate, which was new at the time as a supplement, right? This is 94-ish, right? 94, 95. I remember I had every journal article published on creatine, but I had to go the bus to the University of Liverpool, which is where I went to college in England, and find the journal article, read the journal article to see if it worked for what I was looking for, photocopy it so that I had a reference for it, right? There was no like you couldn't print it out. It wasn't on CD-ROMs or anything. It wasn't online. And I remember writing to a professor in Aberdeen in Scotland who was a researcher on creatine and asking him if he had anything and sending him a check to cover the cost of shipping stuff back to me, right? And shout out to Dr. Ron Maughan of Aberdeen who sent me a stack of stuff, and I've never seen him since. And the check was on the top of it, and he'd written across it, "Buy yourself a beer," and sent it back to me, right? And I had that on my wall for a long time.
Awesome.
He paid it forward back then. But let's think about that. That was my thesis, was on creatine monohydrate, and I believe I had maybe 65 references. Yesterday, telling the same story, this podcast in England, I put creatine monohydrate into Google, and there were 5,060,000 hits. Today, less than 24 hours later, there are 5,140,000 hits. Tomorrow it will be up again. There is more information on creatine than I could consume in the rest of my life. Mm-hmm. And it's growing at over that what is that, 80,000 in 24 hours. There's 80,000 new articles or phrases about it appeared online in the last 24 hours. If I know nothing about creatine, now Google, let's be honest, Google's a search engine, but it shows you what it wants to show you, or what people pay to be shown. That's not necessarily the best. It's if I spell it wrong, it's going to send me something wrong. Yeah. So I don't know how to filter this information. It's all equal. Unfortunately, in the social media world, if you've got 50, well, let's use COVID. We got 50 doctors who say one thing about COVID, and then you got a teenage blogger who says something different. They both get the same platform. Yeah. Now that extreme example, we would filter that because we're aware that a doctor and a specialist is smarter than a teenage blogger. Yes. On this topic. Doesn't mean their opinion's not valid. Just means the weight of the evidence goes the other way, right? But when it comes to other things where you don't know, Johnny says to do long, slow running, and Mikey says to do sprints. Who's right? You don't know. And I think that's the skill, is that when I was in college, and perhaps you too, is the ability to access information was the challenge. I couldn't get it. I had to write to people and send them checks and go on buses. Now it's your ability to selectively ignore things. And that's really the skill set, right? Yes. It's not finding information anymore. It's knowing who not to listen to. And it sounds egotistical, but I only listen to people who either maybe researchers, but largely practitioners. If there's a young trainer who's married with a kid, working at 24-hour fitness and getting people in shape and paying his bills with that, I'm interested in what he has to say, because he's doing this. I'm uninterested in what a journalist has to say often. True. A good journalist, shout out to the good guys, they will be interviewing a bunch of experts to form an opinion. the skill set now, I think you're right, is this ability to, I think it's, you use the word filter information.
Yeah.
I'm going to selectively ignore.
I like that. I like that. I like that.
Selective ignorance is the key to success in 2021. Quote.
with us touching that, let's kind of connect it to fat loss now, because that I feel like that's a big trending topic on social media all the time. And with this obesity epidemic that we're suffering in the US, you mentioned it in your book. Again, guys, if you're listening to this, it's The Secrets of Successful Program Design, a how-to guide for busy fitness professionals. There's a chapter on
secrets, right? When I put it in a book, right? That was our the publisher, Human Kinetics, come up with the title, which the title works great. Like it's worked well to sell it, but I'm like, secrets. Like the secrets are like hidden scrolls somewhere, not on a shelf of Barnes and Noble.
on that book, he has a chapter on fat loss, and he talks about the obesity epidemic that we're suffering in the U.S. and how we need to have better fat loss programs. And I thought that was such an interesting way to phrase it. Would you mind diving into that chapter a little bit without giving away too much?
I'll give it all. Yeah, I don't mind.
Awesome.
An overweight person, let's just, I'm going to take all medical stuff out of the thing. There could be things medically going on with people, and I'm not a doctor, don't play one on TV. But if someone has too much body fat, it is a sign that there has been a surplus of energy because of their diet and activity, and the body has laid down additional tissue. Now, the part that we have to understand is this is actually a good thing, sort of evolutionarily, that we faced as cavemen with harsh winters, right, where we couldn't get food. So we're evolutionally designed to store body fat as a protective mechanism against the cold and as a fuel source. We just no longer we have heaters now. We can go indoors. Food is plentiful. So we haven't evolved to solve it. We can be, I don't know, I'm going to be politically incorrect here, and I don't care. I've seen overweight homeless people. That's how cheap a calorie is in the United States of America, that someone with no money can still overconsume calories, right? Like we don't have an issue with starving children, really. Like we perhaps in some areas, but we have an obesity issue. It's the number one non-genetic killer, like smoking and obesity. I think obesity is number one now. So if we think about fat loss from our point of view as fitness professionals, let's start first of all with, you can get lean without exercising whatsoever. So let's not get high and mighty about what we do. So I talk about the hierarchy of fat loss, and it's just like using your time. If you've got no time, it's diet only. If you've got a lot of time, it's diet only plus number two, diet. It's that big. Like, we've got to control what we're doing. Then what we do is we hinge upon three factors. Number one is you've got to create an energy deficit. The body has to be short of energy so that it eats itself for fuel. That's the gross term. It's going to eat the fat tissue for fuel, right? It cannibalizes itself. If I come into your house and you've got two wallets lying on your table, and I was going to rob one, and one has $900 in it and one has $400 in it, you're going to want me to steal the 400 one. You're going to keep the 900 one because it's worth more to you.
Yes.
That's the issue we have with fat. Fat is 9 calories per gram. Protein, muscle, is 4 calories per gram when we eat it. Kind of holds true to use it as fuel in the body. Your body will preferentially give up the protein to keep the 9 calories, right? Because it's more valuable in the future. So we have to send it a signal that you can't give up the protein. And we do that through keeping protein intake high in our diet. That's our second phase. And then adding what I call an anabolic signal through exercise. Now, I call it metabolic resistance training, and I'm using this training to target the metabolism, right? I'm not trying to get stronger. I'm not trying to build muscle. I'm using it to target the metabolism, but it's still sending a signal to the body that we are going to have to eat tissue to survive. Here's where you get it from, Really, that's the whole weight of what I'm explaining. So when I say that, does that sound like jogging? Doesn't sound at all like jogging, right?
Not at
Right?
all.
And that's traditionally been the entry-level fat loss program. I've seen certifications, and I'm going to call them out. The American Council on Exercise has a chapter in their fat loss protocol that says walking is a fantastic fat loss tool at 40% max heart rate or below. It can be very effective. It will not be. If that's the only intervention you do, it will not be effective. I feel that the science does not support that statement. That doesn't mean, did I just say, what people will now take out of this podcast is Alwyn Cosgrove says, don't go for a walk. It's not what I said. But as your primary fat loss intervention, right, there's a bunch of rate limiting steps with it. As your primary fat loss intervention, low intensity walking would not be it, right? So again, with a hierarchy, how many hours a week can this general fitness client realistically commit to exercise? Up until I get 3 hours as 3 training sessions, or if you got more time, I may do shorter training sessions. Up until about 4 hours a week, 3 to 4 hours a week, I would do nothing but resistance training. Then I'll add other activities, right? But bear in mind, fat loss shouldn't be a 52-week-a-year thing, right? We shouldn't just be dieting forever. But that's the concept is for training a fat loss client, my targets are you have to be in a negative caloric deficit. You have to have a shortage of calories. And you have to have a positive nitrogen balance, which means a high protein intake so that your body is not catabolic and losing muscle mass. And then you have to send it a signal that, hey, this muscle is important and we're going to need that. And we do that through resistance training, right? And that's really the cornerstone of a short 15-minute idea of fat loss training.
Do we still have time to talk a little bit about OCR? Yeah.
Of course.
So OCR, you've been involved for a while now, and actually you went, was it 2 years ago that you went to the Olympic?
2020 was nothing happened, right? So yeah, it was 2019. I was there. Yeah, August 2019.
Would you mind explaining what your involvement is in that, and how you got started and like what grasped your interest in that sport?
So if I said to people the UFC, everyone knows what UFC is, right? Ultimate Fighting Championships. UFC is not a sport. UFC is a company. The sport is called mixed martial arts, and there's different companies that do that. So when you see Spartan, Tough Mudder, different mud runs, Rugged Maniac, I'm sure I'm leaving a few out. These are all companies, right? These are all the companies that put on events that were originally called mud runs and have now become under the banner of what's called obstacle course racing, right? American Ninja Warriors, obstacle course racing, right? So the sport is called obstacle course racing, OCR. It is Olympic recognized. There's a whole bunch of criteria here. To be Olympic recognized does not mean you're in the Olympics, but it means that you have to follow certain protocols. So in Europe and I believe Asia, OCR is a separate sport. In the United States, for funding reasons, it's under the auspices of USA Pentathlon, which is looking to change their name to multi-sport. Now, pentathlon is shooting, running, swimming, fencing, and horse riding. It was the old warrior, right? That was the 5 things a warrior had to do, and that's the sport of pentathlon. So what they've done with some of the pentathlon events is they added an obstacle course to the running component. And in obstacle course racing, there's always been a target event. In Spartan, it's a spear throw. In a OCR at Olympic level, it'll be a laser shooting. Right, where you have to you have to slow your heart rate down, be steady, and hit a target, like biathlon, right? Yeah. So as the sport is growing, we need to sort of unify and codify training methods so we can develop athletes at this level. So I was involved in the sport early, and then we get asked to. I mean, it's all kind of everything's on freeze right now, right? But we were asked to go in as lead coaches. Really, my role was the sort of strength and conditioning department. My wife Rachel actually in with running mechanics and things like that. It's run by a guy called Ian Adamson, who's if you Google Ian Adamson in adventure sports, he's maybe the GOAT, right? He's won all these eco challenges. He's a superstar, and we're just really coming up with best practices for developing we do it at Results Fitness. We have 2 teams. It's been very popular amongst our members. We call them Team Complete, who are just going out with their friends to finish the race. We've got Team Compete, who want to put down some times and go to the next level, right? So our role is to try to develop the whole thing across obstacle course racing and come up with good protocols. So in the Olympics, the events, I believe, will be it may not be called this, but it will be Ninja, which will be the sprint division, right? It's the one course. It will be set up slightly different than American Ninja Warrior in that the obstacles won't be that challenging, so it'll be a true race. You should be able to complete everything on it. It'll be a true race. Yes. I don't know if they'll do it just times, or I had seen one where they put 2 against each other like a match, and the winner goes through the next round.
Oh, damn.
And then they're going to do one with, I believe, a standardized distance, which I think is going to be a 3K and a 10K. Spartan right now has a sprint, a super, and a beast. Beast is a half marathon distance. And they have ultra beast, which is a marathon distance with the obstacles. So they have different divisions, but the challenge is to develop these athletes. You're looking at a time, like it's the time for a beginner to do a 5K. It could be an hour. They have to have cardio for an hour. For an elite athlete, it could be 30 minutes or so, right? And so we're involved with a USA OCR. Go to usaocr.com and we're trying to create programs. Like I said, a lot of things the Olympics were postponed, so who knows where that's going. But it's in the US, OCR is it's very hard to add sports to the Olympics. That's the politics behind it. Yeah. But it's easy to add events. That's why you see swimming's got so many different 4 strokes, like 10 different distances at each stroke, right? Yeah. To add an event, to add a weight class in boxing would be easier. To add BMX and mountain biking are not in the Olympics. Yeah. Cycling is in the Olympics, and there's subdivisions that are in the Olympics, right? So that's how you have to come in right now under another sport. Karate is in for Tokyo and is already out for Paris. I predict that Taekwondo's in the Olympics, and karate and perhaps kickboxing and kung fu will all come in under what will be an umbrella for stand-up martial arts at some point. That they'll be in a certain division. So that's the politics of Olympic sport aside, is it? That it's not going to be in the Olympics yet, but it's recognized as a subdivision, and I'm excited to be involved. It's one of the few sports that there is no history on the conditioning of it. Like the history is looking at rock climbing or looking at endurance running and trying to set out, kind of like what we did with fat loss. We looked at endurance runners and bodybuilders and tried to come up with something, right? This works, right? And instead of looking at how do you do fat loss in the first place, OCR was something like that to me that I kind of got excited about it personally, because there's like there's nothing here. There's like we can't mix rock climbing and long distance running and think it'll work. We've got to create a hybrid athlete that's, you know, you've got to be strong, you got to be resilient, you got to have upper body strength. It's it's been pretty fun to learn over the years how I would write a program for an obstacle course athlete.
Yeah, that's sorry, blanked out there for a little bit. I wanted to make sure we got that in, because we are getting close to the hour, and I do want to respect your time. But yes, I like whenever I saw that you guys were the day I saw you guys were involved in the whole OCR thing, but more now at an Olympic level, I was like, I just wanted to know more, and that's one of the things I am interested in learning more about, just how you program for that. And then I do remember, but this is going to be for another time, you mentioning about was it multiplanar loading specifically at the last Perform Better, and that is for sure something that I will be reaching out to you in the future to learn more about.
Just to tease, multi-directional loading, multiplanar makes sense. So if I was to show, if I did a lunge in place, a split squat, right, just vertically, I'm loaded vertically. Everybody understands that. If I put a dumbbell in one hand, I am loaded vertically because of the gravity and the weight of the dumbbell. But because it's in one hand, I'm also loaded in the frontal plane. I'm having to do a vertical side plank in order to work that.
Yes.
Right? Now, if I did, instead of that dumbbell, I used a cable that was in front of me. Now that load is in front of me. So I could have a cable in front of me. I have vertical load. I have a load in front of me, and I could put a sandbag on this shoulder. And now I've got I've got that frontal plane with the sandbag. I've got this forward and back load with the cable, and I got this vertical load because of gravity. But because of that one arm on the cable and the stance I'm in, I'm rotating. So now I have rotation. So I'm loaded 4 loads at once, right? That's what happens in sport. All these things going on at once, right? And sprinting is a strong rotational activity that cancel. Like if you have people sprint with their eyes closed, they won't run in a straight line. That feedback corrects them. But it's force of the right leg rotates you hard. Force of the left leg rotates you hard, and they equal each other out to go forward. Right. So when we start looking at programming, we have to take into account not just the load on the muscle, the load on the system, and the direction in which we're producing that load.
Are you sure that doesn't sound too functional, Alan?
That's Josh, I posted one, and someone said it was just for those listening. It was Josh Henkin reposted it, and someone's like, "Looks great, maybe a little too functional." And me and him were laughing. Like I knew what the guy was meant. Like it's little, like, it gets a little wacky. But I was using this to demonstrate something.
Yeah.
But the concept would still hold true. You maybe wouldn't have to do all 5 at once. But I don't know what too functional is.
Yeah.
Like I understood that. I'm not making fun of the guy who asked it because I know what he meant. Like it looks kind of wacky. But I remember something like Josh was like, too functional. What does that mean? Right.
Yeah, I don't know, but yes, we're gonna have to do another podcast on that topic for sure. Whenever you have time, I'll reach out to you in the future. I want to thank you again. Any last words before we jump off, Alan?
No, my favorite quote I like to leave people with is the only place success comes before work is in the dictionary, right? And I used that at Perform Better a lot 2 years ago, and it's like opportunity looks a lot like work, right?
Yes.
It looks like a lot like hard work. So just be aware. It shows up in disguise.
Yes. Right? Yes. Be aware to just be ready to take that opportunity and jump on it so you can work hard. Alan, thank you so much. We're going to wrap it up here. I really appreciate you sharing your time with us, and I look forward to speaking with you in the future and then putting out some more content because I'm going to use every opportunity I have to pick your brain. Thank you so much.
Cheers, man. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, guys. Thank you guys for listening. Alan, don't leave because I do need your address or something so I can send you some coffee your way from Regent Coffee in Glendale. I'm not sponsored, I promise, but coffee's good there. Guys, thank you for listening. Have a great rest of your day. Have a great rest of your night or mid-afternoon, whatever time you're listening on this. Thank you. Have a great rest of your day. I said that again. Bye.
Cheers, guys.